A failure resume for growth. What is a failure resume?
If we were asked which one we prefer between success and failure, we would all choose success. That is, no one wants to fail. However, despite our fear of failure, it is not always avoidable. Although we all fail, the experience and the results differ from one person to another. While some turn failure into success through the lessons they learn, others continue to fail because they are not aware of the lessons failure offers. In order to learn from failure, it is important for us to reflect. Writing a failure resume can help us to do this. Tina Seelig, a professor at Stanford University, requires all her students to create a failure resume. That is, to craft a resume that summarizes all their biggest failures in their academic, personal, and professional lives. The students are asked to write about what their major failure was and why they ended in failure. Also, they need to state how they have overcome the failure, what effects the failure they experienced has had on their lives, and what lessons they have learned from that experience. Writing such a resume helps the students realize that viewing experiences through the failure forces them to come to terms with the mistakes they have made along the way.
Why is a failure resume useful for you?
First, a failure resume can help you admit your failure. We are quick to put our failures behind us, but the process of writing a failure resume will allow you to purposefully take the time to analyze and understand your failure. In doing so, you will be able to admit your failure and perceive the situation objectively and impartially. Second, a failure resume may urge you to be more constructive. Failure has immense power to pull a person down. But writing a failure resume can allow you to learn from your failure rather than be discouraged. What you learn from your own failure will be a very valuable lesson, one that you cannot acquire from books. The wisdom from failure can be a significant resource in your personal growth and give you a chance to become a better you.
How do you write a failure resume?
Writing a failure resume is a 3-step process. First, write down what the major failure has been in your life. Putting your failure on a sheet of paper seems like an easy task, but in reality, it may take lots of courage to admit that you have failed multiple times in your life. Second, mention why you have failed. Ask yourself why this happened, and keep asking until you get answers from yourself. Because deep down, we all know the real reason for failure, but don't want to admit it. Finally, outline the lessons learned from your failure. Keeping a record of what you have learned from your failure can remind you of the lessons and prevent you from repeating the same mistakes.
Josh's failure resume. Getting a D in math. In my opinion, there is no better teacher than failure. Wisdom is what you get from experience, and experience is what you get from failure. I know this because I failed, and it turned me around in a way that modest or even spectacular success could not have. It all started with a D. Getting a D probably isn't the worst thing in the world, but it's not something anyone wants to see. However, during my junior year in high school, one was written on my test. I could already see my chances of a 4-year college going up in smoke. What happened? I'm not a D student, but I had to admit to myself that I simply didn't study, and I don't remember precisely why. There is always a reason for not studying, isn't there? I didn't study, took a test unprepared, and failed. I chose to work harder. From my failure, that D, I had already learned the results of not studying. I knew both the problem and the solution. I steadily brought my grade up on subsequent tests and papers. At the end of the school year, my hard work paid off, and I was able to raise my grade. In a way, my experience of failure not only helped me get a better grade, but it also allowed me to change my study habits. Without this experience, I would have continued to simply get by with an average grade, rather than reach for something higher. In other words, had I not failed, I would have learned nothing. I might have done much worse on a later test, since I thought studying was not important. Instead, by failing, I was able to change for the better. Now I can proudly say, I'm glad that I failed.